Hi, I'm Andrew, the Young Adult and Media Librarian at North Brunswick Public Library. Today I'm going to talk about a character who's been around since 2013. It's a relatively new character, but is already a sort of a major Marvel figure, in part because she's unique and of her time. Right, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, is the first Muslim character to headline their own book at Marvel. There have been Muslim characters before as members of teams. They haven't necessarily had solo series and not necessarily as popular as this Ms. Marvel. Kamala Khan is not the first character to be known as Ms. Marvel. There have been three figures before her. Most significantly, the original Ms. Marvel was Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers, you may know as Captain Marvel, but who is very much Kamala's role model and mentor. Now, Marvel has a long tradition of having teenagers who might be ordinary, maybe a bit smarter than the average teenager, who suddenly find that they have superpowers. I'm thinking of Spider-Man, both Peter Parker and Miles Morales, and the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four, and the original X-Men. Now, these are characters who sort of have to balance their lives, their social lives, their family obligations, their school, etc., with being a superhero. So in that sense, Ms. Marvel is very much a traditional Marvel character, even though she deals with some very 21st century issues, like some things like politics and gentrification, for example, that sort of look at today's headlines that have to do with the action that goes on. Now, Marvel characters are typically not the creation by one person necessarily. The creators of Miss Marvel are considered the editors Sana Amanat, who herself grew up as a Muslim teen in the United States, and I think a lot of her own personal experiences went into Miss Marvel, as well as the editor Stephen Wacker and the writer G. Willow Wilson, who wrote the first 60 or so issues of Ms. Marvel, and the artists Adrian Alfonso and Jamie McKelvey that really created the look of the series. So, in doing so, they really created a character who some people find particularly meaningful. Now, the first, I would start with. You can read these books in any order, but I think it makes sense to start with the first one, Ms. Marvel Volume 1, No Normal, which is to your left on the screen. And here we see, fairly typical teenager, a bit smarter than most, but one day she finds something strange happens when a mist comes over, and suddenly she's able to change her shape and size. She gets superpowers. Now, if you've read a lot of Marvel comics, you may know that this mist is a Terrigen mist, which the members of the Inhuman race undergo in order to achieve their latent superpowers. You don't have to have read a lot of Marvel comics to enjoy Ms. Marvel. I think that's a good thing. You can dive right in. You'll see a lot of the other Marvel Avengers pop in from time to time, as well as the Spider-Man and Wolverine, and especially Captain Marvel. But you can just enjoy them as they are. So anyhow, you may want to get familiar with this character, especially if you know that there's going to be a live action series on Disney Plus soon about her. How would you find out about her using your library card? Well, I'm going to take a look at what options we have for you in order to read the stories. I'm just going to share my screen right now. First, we're going to take a look at our online catalog. Now remember, if you have your library card, you can just place a hold on anything you find here. I'm going to type in Miss Marvel. Right. And I want to narrow, okay, it gives me 65 results. I'm going to narrow that down a little bit because I'm going to click on items owned by North Brunswick. And you can see we have the first few Miss Marvel books, the first few to be published and the first few chronologically. By the way, if you'd like us to get more hard copies, please let me know, because I always want to hear what people want us to order. Interestingly enough, some other things came up, some other new books. 27 Essential Principles of Story, Master the Secrets of Great Storytelling, from Shakespeare to South Park, because there is a chapter that looks at that first Ms. Marvel storyline, No Normal. Also an upcoming book for the children's section, Orientation, and a children's book about Ms. Marvel alongside other young Marvel heroes. And then we have All New, All Different Avengers, Volume 1, The Magnificent Seven. That's where you can see Ms. Marvel's adventures as a member of the Avengers, but alongside classic heroes and new heroes. By the way, on the topic of Avengers, we also have the new Avengers video game for PS4 and Xbox One, where Ms. Marvel is appearing alongside more traditional Avengers like Captain America and Iron Man, but so you can put a hold on those as well. Now, if you like ebooks, the first 4 storylines are available not only as hard copies but as ebooks on Overdrive. You can get them using the Libby app. Now, what I think also is interesting here, if we go to Hoopla, Hoopla has a ton of things on Ms. Marvel. They have from the earliest 2 collections to ones that came out just a few months ago. There's even a couple of audiobooks here based on the storylines of the comics. And they have the collection of, as I mentioned earlier, the first Miss Marvel's was Carol Danvers, and there's some early storyline with that. But anyhow, I read all the ones on Kamala Khan. They're a lot of fun. But yeah, I think probably the one that had the storyline I enjoyed the most was probably Miss Marvel 7, Damage Per Second. The first storyline in this is about voting and voter suppression, which is something that was in the news lately. But there's also a really cool villain in this collection after that storyline, and who seems to have some kind of connection to the computer. And I don't want to give away too much about it because I don't want to ruin any of the surprises that are in store. As I mentioned before, I do like to look at comics on Hoopla because you can look at them one panel at a time, and it feels a little bit like you're watching a movie as opposed to a book. You're still definitely reading, but there's that option out for you. So I'm curious to hear from anybody who has opinions about Ms. Marvel, if you love her, if you don't really care about her, if you think that she's too political. By the way, Marvel comics have always been political, so have superhero comics in general. But and honestly, I think you may like some of the later stories where the stories become a lot more cosmic as they go along. And one of the advantages that I think you have if you read them in order of publication is that you get to see Kamala grow as a person as well as a superheroine, and sort of learning how to use her powers well, especially with help from her sort of boyfriend, but not really her boyfriend, Bruno, her friend, who is a friend with some romantic tension in there, who's basically the brains of the operation once Ms. Marvel becomes a superheroine. I also really enjoyed seeing Kamala's interaction not only with her other friends, but also with her family. And the family is always a good source for conflict in storylines, right? She has a very traditional, she has traditional family, and she sort of wants to get out and enjoy things. And there's a conflicts that a lot of people can identify with. So let me know, should we get more hard copies of the Miss Marvel collections? And I'm curious to hear if there are any other characters you'd like me to take a look at in this series. In the meantime, happy reading.